Welcome to From Shadows to the Block, a collection where the characters don't just exist, they breathe, they fight, and they survive. If they're lucky.
The Visitor, a short story by Brian Eldridge Sr., 2026. The temperature in the room spiked noticeably as hunger pangs pinched the prisoners one by one. It was the middle of the day, and the powdered eggs and dry toast of breakfast had long been burned away. Playful card games became tension-fueled staring contests. Light-hearted banter deteriorated into sharp insults. McCreary was populated with strong personalities who could turn on a dime. Among those residents of the federal penal system was Duane Clemons. Even among some of the most violent and ruthless offenders, Clemons stood apart. Outside, in Louisville, he was simply known as Duane or Clemons. In the streets, the name garnered respect. Some wanted to be like him, others just wanted to remain in his good graces. Inside the prison, he was practically untouchable. His money and connections made things better for not only himself, but everyone. He funded a lifestyle inside that rivaled the life that most people lived outside. He arranged a pipeline of money and narcotics using the guards as his couriers. He compartmentalized this operation from his outside operation, which protected both businesses, and also allowed the money earned inside to be spent solely on luxuries that would be otherwise unavailable. While most of the prisoners drooled over a gristly pork cutlet from the cafeteria, Duane and the people surrounding him had fajitas with flank steak awaiting them. "Chow!" yelled a guard from the door, as most of the men scrambled from their activities to go feed their faces. Duane sat quietly on the couch, pushed into the back corner of the room. That day's Courier Journal and a copy of Essence magazine sat in front of him on the table. Four of his closest associates stood by like statues as the commons area emptied out. The guard stepped in and came towards Duane. As he got closer, he removed his hat and his face softened. Duane looked up, meeting his meek gaze. "Your lunch is here." Duane gave a slight nod and then signaled for his associates to scatter, but the guard remained in his place. Duane squinted at him and grabbed his smoldering cigar from the ashtray on the table. He took a long puff and blew out a thick plume as he watched the guard. He was losing his patience waiting for this man to say what he wanted or needed to say. "What?" The man's shoulders jumped and he took an almost stumbling step backwards before he spoke with a mild stutter. "I know you don't do visitors during your lunch, but—" Duane's eyes cut over to the door and then back to the guard. "She says she's your attorney." The hardened stare Duane held softened briefly before he took another pull of his cigar. He snuffed it out and stood up, brushing off his jumpsuit. "Bring my food to the meeting room, and bring an extra serving. And drinks," he said, walking past the guard and out of the room. Duane sat down behind the table. He knew he wasn't presently paying any lawyers, as he had exhausted his appeals years ago. There was only one person this could be, but he wasn't sure why she would be here now. The smell of the onions and peppers swirled into his nose as he willed himself not to dig in before his guest arrived. Instead, he took a long gulp of water. As he put down the cup with a light thump, the door opened. He was right.
"Duane," she said, her eyes wandering over the spread of food on the table, "you couldn't have sprung for something Asian infused?"
Duane gave a silent laugh, his hands clasped between his legs and his eyes locked on his visitor. "Miss Bolt, if I knew you were coming, I would have got you whatever you wanted." She pulled out the chair with a scrape as the door closed behind her. She flopped into the seat and hung her satchel over the back corner of the chair.
"Why so formal? It's Pam, and you know that."
Duane studied her. It had been years since they laid eyes on each other. Her smooth, dark skin looked as soft as warm butter. Her silky jet black hair was tied back into a bun. Duane tried not to stare, but she had already grabbed him with her slit-like eyes. "Pam, why are you here? Don't you have work to do in Frankfurt?" Pamela reached across the table and grabbed a piece of steak and held it limply between her fingers.
"I always have something to do. That's why I'm here, working for the people, offering a little help."
Duane blew out a sharp breath and then began to build his fajita. He didn't speak. He just methodically put toppings on the tortilla before he looked up and saw Pam still staring, but chewing on the pilfered steak. He put the built fajita on a plate and slid it across the table to her. She playfully spun the styrofoam plate around and gave Duane a soft smile. "What kind of help?" She leaned in close enough for Duane to smell her floral scent, and his eyes nearly closed as his senses nearly went into autopilot.
"You remember Ramsey Gaines?"
Duane felt a jolt in his muscles as his fingers twitched. His eyes spread wide, and he bit his lip. Yeah, he whispered. She took a bite of the fajita and some of the sauce smeared on the corner of her mouth. She chewed slowly, keeping eye contact with Duane. He waited impatiently for her to finish chewing, his white-on-white Jordans tapping the concrete floor.
He's coming here.
Duane felt a tightness in his chest twist into rage in his belly. His wide eyes tightened as the need to get up and move built rapidly. He could only scratch out one word. Why? Pamela leaned back and pulled out a newspaper article about a human trafficking case implicating Ramsey Gaines as a participant. She slid it across the table, and Duane snatched it up, taking in the words. His lips curled into a smile for a moment before he went straight-faced again and slid the paper back to Pam, who was finishing her fajita. Dirty motherfucker, Duane mumbled under his breath. Pamela gave a soft laugh, the smile still stuck on her face.
You always maintained that Sean Colston's shit was planted in your office?
Duane blew out a hot breath as his eyes bounced from the table back to Pam.
Gaines was the FBI's man on the ground. He gave sworn testimony at your trial. He watched Reginald Zora.
Duane banged a fist on the table as a white-hot rage burned through his body. His jaw clenched, and his stare shook Pam for a moment. She cleared her throat and began to speak, but Duane cut her off. His words came out shaky but deliberate. I lost my family over this shit. Zora and me, we could have had kids. A life. Duane scrubbed his face with his hands and gave a fake smile to Pam, who stared at him with a curious look.
You really do love them.
Duane scoffed and began constructing another fajita.
So what if Gaines has information that proves the FBI planted evidence? She asked, leaning back and crossing her legs.
Why would he admit that? Pam's smile returned, and she blinked at Duane slowly. Her hands rested on her knee.
Because you can help him. You know he didn't traffic those women. He was set up too.
Duane released a loud, humorless laugh. He shook his head and clapped his hands with mock amusement. So you want us to squash all this shit and just team up or something? Pam looked around the room. She took in the cold gray walls and made note of what appeared to be a blood stain on the concrete in the corner. Duane watched her, still waiting for her answer. His skin was still smooth, and his beard had been recently manicured, cut close to his strong jaw. She imagined rubbing her hands up his tattooed forearms and up his biceps before she heard his voice. Pam, what is this? She released a long, breathy sigh.
Duane, this is your chance to go home. It's this or nothing. You should take advantage of it.
There was a code among criminals. It was mostly about not snitching. Let what happens in the streets play out in the streets. But there was another code that superseded that one. You don't hurt children and women. Duane was no saint, obviously. He had facilitated some prostitution in his earlier days, but he didn't like the business. It got too messy, too personal. Sex trafficking was prostitution's rancid step-cousin. He didn't know Ramsey that well, but he did know most of the players in the business in the region. A few phone calls could reveal the truth. The question was really, would Ramsey admit to his part in planting evidence? And by doing so, would he be okay opening the door for Duane to find his liberty on the streets of Louisville again? I'll consider it, Pam, Duane said, his voice gruff. Pam stood from her seat and gave him a smile. She walked around the table and tapped her nails against his tense forearms and leaned over close enough that Duane could almost taste her.
When you get out, I'll throw you a coming home party.
Duane knitted his brow and looked at her, drinking in her glossy skin and the coffee brown of her eyes. He had spent nearly 20 years in lockup. Zora was the woman in his heart, even though she had made it clear she didn't want to see him. Pam, however, had simmered on the back burner for more than a decade. He remembered them being left alone after the senior members of his legal counsel excused themselves during appeals preparation. The room was an icy light blue, and the smell of cinderblock dust and stale coffee seeped into every breath. Pam sat across from him, her face buried in a stack of papers. Duane watched as she licked her finger and flipped to the next page. She released a deep sigh, and that simple sound sent a shudder through Duane's body. Zora, Duane said to himself, like an incantation. Pam looked up, catching Duane's dark gaze on her. Neither of them spoke, allowing the heavy glare they shared to leave the necessary impression.
You know, Pam said, still smiling. When we get you out of here, I'm throwing you a shindig.
Duane chuckled dryly. He let his eyes study her for a moment before he released a long sigh. Not sure that would be appropriate, counselor. Pam ran her fingers through her hair and then stretched. She cleared her throat and then leaned in close, beckoning Duane to lean in.
I'm never appropriate. I just get the job done.
Back in the present, Duane remembered what she told him years ago, the charged look they exchanged. He shifted in his seat and turned, his face mere inches from hers. I'm looking forward to it. After Pam left, Duane reached into his pocket and pulled out his burner phone. He walked over to the door and pulled it open. A guard looked up, giving Duane his full attention. I'm going to need this room for a couple of hours. He closed the door behind him, leaving the guard in the hallway. He first sent a text message to his business partner in Hopkinsville, OG. What you know about Ramsey Gaines, my nigga? Then he called his closest friend. Reggie, checking in, bro. You good? How's Vonnie and the kids? He listened as Reginald gave 30 seconds of family chatter. A genuine smile grew across his face as he absorbed a taste of the outside world. That's what's up. Give them my love. Duane walked to the corner and leaned against the wall, closing his eyes. He thought about the 18 years he had lost with Zora and with Reginald. The trips, the weddings, the birthdays. He couldn't get back those 18 years, but maybe he could make the next 18 better. Bro, I got some news. I need you to ask around about Ramsey Gaines. Reginald was quiet on the other end. For a moment, Duane thought Reginald had disconnected the phone. When Reginald responded, Duane gave him a simple instruction. I need some leverage.
Thank you for walking these streets with me. From shadows to the block is a world woven from these lives and desperate moments. None of them exist alone. Every story here echoes into the next. I'll see you in the shadows.